Hello everybody, this is going to be a quick intro to nParticles. So the first thing you want to do is change your menu set from modeling to effects. That is where you will find the nParticles. Under nParticles create options you have a number of different selections: point, balls, cloud, thick cloud, and water. The selection balls will create particles that look like spheres. Notice that I haven't created anything yet in my scene. I will now go to nParticles Create Emitter, and what I want you to notice is that there were three nodes that were created: an emitter node, an nParticle node, and a nucleus node. If I rewind my timeline and then hit play, we will see my particle system. Let's start looking at the different parts of the nParticle system that we've created, starting with the emitter. Selecting the emitter in my scene and then opening up the attribute editor, we can start playing with the different settings. Rates per particle per second will set the number of particles that are emitted per second. The default is set to 100. I'm going to change it to 1,000. Rewinding and playing, it seems to play fine. Let's try setting it to 10,000 particles per second. And here you can see that the particle system really slows down. Notice that we get a warning down in the bottom right corner of our screen. What we want to do is go to our animation preferences and change the playback speed to play every frame. When I hit play, you'll notice that the playback will happen more slowly, but very importantly, it'll play every single frame. It won't skip any frames. This is very important when working with particle systems. I'm going to set my particle system back to 100 particles per second. Not only can we change the rate that the particle systems are emitted, but also the speed or force which they're emitted. Under Basic Emission Speed Attributes, you'll notice that there is a speed setting. Default is set to 1. You can interactively change that value, as well as manually type in a value. I'm going to change the speed attribute of my particle system to 12. With your emitter selected, you can also change the type of emitter. Currently it is set to omni. I am going to change mine to directional. Now, instead of emitting in all directions, it'll emit in only one direction. Under Distance Direction Attributes, I can change the direction which the particle system emits particles. I'm going to change mine to Y, 1, and change X to 0 so that the particles are emitted straight up. If I want the particle system to emit particles in one direction but still fan out, I can change the spread value for my emitter. When initially experimenting with emitters, I recommend setting it to a low value, such as 12. This way it'll only emit 12 particles per second. It's a little easier to see what's happening if you're not looking at so many particles at once. Now that we've spent a little time looking at the emitter, let's take a look at the nParticle itself. The nParticle is what gets emitted from the emitter. Under particle size, we can change the size of the particles that get emitted by changing its radius. And by going to shading, we can change the color of our particle. Instead of using a gradient for my particle system, I could make my particles all red. Or yellow. Or I could create my own gradient. We've looked at the emitter, the nParticles. Let's move on to the nucleus node. The nucleus node are the environmental conditions that our particle system exists in. Selecting my nucleus node, I'm going to turn on Use Plane. This will create a ground for my particles to collide with. I can also adjust the gravity in the nucleus node. By decreasing the gravity, or bringing it all the way to zero, gravity will not affect the particles at all. I can also bring the gravity to a very high number so it has even a stronger effect on my particles. When explaining particle systems to students, I like to compare it to something like a sprinkler system. When teaching students about nParticles, I like to use an example like a sprinkler system, where the emitter is the sprinkler, the nParticle is the water that gets emitted from the sprinkler, and the nucleus node are the environmental conditions such as gravity that affect the particles as they are emitted. So that was a very quick introduction to nParticles, hopefully enough to get you started playing around with these tools and techniques. Thank you for watching.